Now let's go ahead and talk about our next reuse strategy, and that is books inside of books. And we refer to this as a master book to sub-book relationship. And you may have actually already seen this going on in the library, but we'll talk about it in a little more detail here. Books inside of books is when you place a set of topics that are always used together inside of its own book. So let's say that you have a bundle of topics that always appear in the same sequence and hierarchy, and they happen to appear in different chapters or different books or maybe in different document sets altogether. A very easy way to keep that bundle of objects together is to place it inside of its own book. And then when you want to reuse that bundle of topics, then you just simply place that sub-book inside of the master book. That sub-book can exist on its own, it can be published on its own, or it can be published as a section of the master book. It's completely your choice. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that let's say that you do plan on publishing that sub-book on its own, and it has its own title page, table of contents, and index inside of it. All right? So if you were to reuse that sub-book in the master book, in the long run, you may have the master book has a title page, table of contents, and index, but the sub-book does as well. So what happens in that case? Do you end up with two tables of contents in your document? What happens is that author will actually ignore those special objects in the subbooks. It will only publish using the special objects that are in the master book. So you will only end up with one title page, table of contents, index, and so on in the long run. So those objects are ignored in the subbook so that you can still publish that subbook on its own, and it can still have its own navigation in it, or you can publish it as part of the master book as well. So the way to get a book inside of a book is our simple drag and drop feature, where we basically drag one book inside of another book. All right, so what we've done in this case is we've taken a subbook called Acme Accessories. And this is basically a standalone chapter by the size of it. Let's say it's a common chapter that appears across multiple user guides. All right, so what we've done is basically encapsulated all of those topics that always appear in the same sequence and hierarchy into their own subbook, and then clicked and dragged in that Acme Accessories subbook inside of my master book. Now when you publish the X1000 user guide, Authored is going to ignore the fact that these topic objects are inside of a subbook. It really has no bearing on the publication process. It would be as if these topic objects were inside of this book without having a book object surrounding them. Okay? It's really just an organizational technique for you. All right, so we're going to go ahead and then publish that X1000 user guide. It's going to add this Acme Accessories chapter to it, and then the title page and table of contents of Acme Accessories would be ignored when you publish the master book, so that you only end up with a title page and table of contents from your master book instead. Let's go ahead and take a look at that here. All right, let's find a good candidate for a subbook. I'm going to go ahead and open up the X1000 user guide in the properties view. Gives me a little bit more room on the screen to work. I'm going to go ahead and open up the X2001 in properties view. Put these side by side. All right. Now when I do that, notice how we've got the same getting started sections here. And if I expand them, Looks like they are the same bundle of topics with the same sequence and hierarchy. Alright, so this is a very good candidate for placing this section inside of a subbook. So what we're going to go ahead and do is now create a new book. And let's go ahead and base it on the user manual template. And I'm going to call this the Getting Started book. I'll go ahead and click Apply. Now in this book, I can choose whether or not I want to keep these special objects inside of the book if I do plan on ever publishing this book by itself. Maybe I don't ever plan on doing that, so I'll just go ahead and remove these objects from the book. Alright, now what I want to do is grab that parent topic, and when I do that, I get the entire section inside of my subbook, alright? All I did was grab the parent and the entire section came over. So whenever you're working with the parent, the child topics are affected as well. Alright, so here's my subbook for Getting Started. Alright, this is my reusable chapter that appears in multiple user guides. So I don't need these sections in my user guides now, so I'm actually going to select the parent, hit remove. Alright, select the parent, hit remove, and in its place, I want to drag in the Getting Started guide. So I'll go ahead and grab that book, click, and drag it in. Alright, and I'll go ahead and do that over here as well, underneath the Acme X1000 section. And there we go. So what I've basically done is placed that same bundle of topics inside of their own subbook. And it makes them more portable this way. Alright, now I'll show you the beauty of this. Let's open up the Getting Started subbook. Let's say I add a new topic to it. Getting help. Why would you need to do that? Let's say that I've added a topic to this section. Let's say I've changed the hierarchy around a little bit as well. I've basically done some maintenance on this chapter. Now because this chapter is now in its own subbook, that subbook has been updated with the same changes in the other locations that that subbook has been used. But if those were just loose topics like they were before inside of multiple user guides, I would have had to make those same changes to each user guide manually. Alright, so by them being in a subbook instead, any changes I make in the subbook are automatically reflected in all of the locations that that subbook is used. So because of that, most clients will actually place each chapter in their books inside of their own subbook. Alright, so that if they ever do reuse that chapter, they just drag and drop in the subbook instead of dragging and dropping in a loose bundle of topics, because there's more maintenance involved with this loose bundle of topics if they had to be changed over time. Alright, now notice here how the Getting Started subbook is at a level 1 position in my book. So that means that the topic object that starts that subbook will also be at a level 1 position. If I were to indent that book at a level 2, for example, then that means that this topic would publish starting at a level 2 position. Okay, so the location of this subbook and its hierarchy in the master book determines what level that subbook starts publishing in. So right now it's going to start to publish at a level 2. If I indent that or promote that, it's going to now publish at a level 1, heading 1 position here.